He was also the author of the very first joke today.
That's right. My most distinguished honor.
All right, well, I'll let him take it from here.
Wow, all right. Fantastic. So I know that everyone is absolutely itching to get to that beer stand over there. I am right there with you. Don't worry about it. So we'll wrap this up in about 20 minutes, but I will try to make it as entertaining as possible along the way. There will be cats, there will be lasers, there will be tacos. As Steve said, my name's J Salva. Does anyone here, who here knows what taco is? Yeah, a little bit, few hands. All right, taco, yeah. It's an acronym for Tools for Apache Cordova. Tools for Apache Cordova is kind of the suite of products that Microsoft has been curating and building up over the course of the last year to enable developers like you to do more awesome things, like cats with lasers in space. When I was last here a year ago, it was really to tell you guys about a product that we had just launched, Visual Studio, Tools for Apache Cordova in the IDE. And we also around the same time had a Visual Studio emulator that we released as well. The emulator, it's pretty cool, pretty awesome. Google has done such an awesome job with their emulator that I literally waited 2 entire presentations for their Google emulator to start up on the Mac side of things before finally killing the mother freaking thing and deciding to just do all of my demos today on the iOS simulator because their emulator is so freaking bad. But if you're on a Windows machine, there is a Google emulator there, and it's pretty awesome. So the IDE was fantastic because, at least to the best of my knowledge, it was the first development environment that enabled you to debug for any browser, any emulator, on any device for all the platforms, right? Whether it was iOS or Android or Windows, it was an integrated development environment, as they call them. But since then, we've been busy. We've been doing a lot of good stuff. And so today, despite the title of my talk, we are not going to be talking primarily about Visual Studio. No, children. We're going to be talking about new innovations and new things that have happened over the course of the last year in the Apache Cordova ecosystem at large. And hopefully, along the way, you'll learn a little bit about the work that other people are doing to make you better at your job and some new and interesting ways that you can be better at your job in the next year until we meet here again. So what's happened since that last PhoneGap day back in San Francisco? What time of month was it? It was kind of summerish, if I remember correctly, right? We'll call it that August day in the Roman sense. Well, we released the Windows 10 framework, no, Windows 10 platform, rather, right? And so it's pretty awesome. Now you could actually build for Windows 10 right there along with the best and the brightest of iOS and Android. We also, if you haven't seen it, did a redesign of the Apache Cordova website in the last year. Finally got a much-needed refresh that our friends actually over at Ionic helped us do a little bit of a logo refresh on it as well. If you didn't recognize it, there's a new typeface there. Pristine, awesome. Applause for that, indeed. Absolutely. Along the way, we had a survey that went out. And actually, did anyone take the survey on the Apache Cordova website this year? A few of you, hands up, yeah. So a lot of you told us that the docs kind of suck. Okay, that's cool. So we've spent collectively as a community, as a Cordova community, trying to improve those docs. And there's still a lot of work left to be done, but hopefully with your contributions and with our contributions and all the people across the world that are contributing to it, our docs will finally get to a place where you can feel like you can go and find the answers that you need. All the plugins, they moved over to NPM. They're no longer in kind of the plugin repository. And for that, we needed a new way to discover plugins once again. And so we built plugin search. Really, really critical when you don't know what's out there. We also built platform save, plugin save, and restore so that you didn't have to deal with a whole business about the platforms and the plugins getting checked into your repo, and then maybe they're not all on the same version. That sucked. And so now you can just save your platform version, save your plugin versions in config.xml. You don't have to check any of that mess in, and you can just focus on checking in and your team working on the code that is your app code. That's good stuff. We also built crazy continuous integration into the Apache Cordova infrastructure so that we could find more of the bugs that are in our plugins and our platforms. And honey, there's a lot of them out there. But now that we've got a little bit of kind of infrastructure there to help protect against new bugs being introduced, we can begin the work to squash those hundreds of plugin bugs that are out there. And in fact, that's what the Cordova committers have really been focusing on with intent for the last several months, trying to clear out that ginormous backlog of bugs. I'll tell you, we recently did an analysis of all the bugs that are in the Cordova framework, specifically for plugins and the major plugins at that. And here's what we found. We found that it would take 246 days after triaging away all the duplicates, all the no repro bugs, 246 man days to clear out the backlog of bugs. What that means is that this tiny community of 30, 70 active committers, everyone's got to basically spend a full month working on it. It's all the people in this room that we need to kind of chip in and lend a hand so that we can help elevate the platform. Having said that, the amount of progress that we've made within the last 3 months trying to chip down that plugin debt has been enormous. And so what we hope that you'll find is as we move to Cordova 6.0, which just released the other day, and had tools releases within the last couple of weeks as well, that you'll start to see that the quality of a lot of those plugins is really, really elevating. And here I kind of want to give a huge shout out to Shaz, who was just on the stage, and Joe helping out with the Android Marshmallow release. We've been able to bring support for all of the latest versions, like in record time from when the platforms actually released themselves. And so now today, Cordova is up to speed with everything that's out there kind of in the wild. So for that, I want to stop and give a round of applause. And specifically here, Cordova committers stand up, please. Committers stand up. So these are the guys who are doing on the front lines, doing all the work. Applause. Second, if you've submitted a pull request for a bug and you're not a committer, can you stand up? Anyone here? Anyone done it? If you've submitted, oh, there we go. One guy. All right. So there's a lot of cool stuff happening out in this. Wow. Someone's out there really wanting the beer. All right. So there's a lot of cool stuff happening in this. And all of that work that's been done, like, this is important because it affects all of us. That core Cordova sort of framework, the project, that project flows down to all of the frameworks and all of the tools that get used by every single one of us. They get used by startups, they get used by giant enterprises, they get used by the biggest players in the industry and the people working in their bedroom late at night after work trying to build a new idea and kind of raise it from the ashes. So this is important stuff. The great thing about this is that over the last 3 years, Cordova and PhoneGap has absolutely doubled and outpaced every other competitor when it comes to cross-platform development. Think about that. You've got Xamarin out there and Unity and Adobe Air and Accelerator and Corona and all these other things. And only Cordova, in terms of mass adoption and usage, has doubled. It's double its nearest competitor now, and it's doubled in the last 3 years. So the community in this room, you as participants, you're making that happen, and I encourage each and every one of you to, let's rewind. Give yourself applause for that, right? Yeah, give yourself applause for that. And for my awesome pixel art guy here, right? But where do we go next? Yeah, Zelda, sweet, right? Where do we go next? That's been a lot of progress. Where do we want to be when we come back here a year from now, right? And we're on stage or we're sitting down in the chairs and we're thinking about all the progress that's happened. What are we going to be talking about then? Well, I've talked a little bit about kind of contributions to the community to build a better platform and a better better environment for us all to build in and to create in. There's been a couple of themes that I've heard kind of recurring kind of over the course of the day. And one of the next ones that I want to focus on is tools made specifically for mobile development. I think it was, oh my gosh, I'm going to forget his name. I think it was Eric in the Supercharge Your Development workflow this morning. Yeah. So was making a really great point about don't forget that these are not web apps that we're building, right? It's great to reappropriate the tools of the web because, well, they're where we are most comfortable. And in the end, we're working with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and all of that stuff that has made the web kind of grow like wildflowers, kind of in the internet. But it's also not the web. These are mobile applications, and they have their own unique challenges and their own unique idiosyncrasies and quirks. And so we need tools that are made specifically for that mobile development. So to that end, I want to kind of drop into demo mode for just a second. I want to talk about a release that we made just a couple of days ago. So let's see here. We're going to do a little bit of live coding, a little bit of live demoing here. So I'm just going to do, let's start with Taco create. I name all of my apps after Greek mythological things. We're going to say Taco create, we're going to say create Zeus. That's kind of awesome. No, Zeus already exists. Homer. We'll go with Homer. Oh man, I pick all my favorite ones. That's because I like the same guys. Let's try Dionysus. How about that? Taco create Dionysus. All right, so Taco Tools for Apache Cordova has a set of command line utilities. In this particular case, it's really practically the exact same thing as the Cordova command line. We're just doing a pass through to that, but it has I kind of like the template in Taco better, so I want to use that one. And let's go ahead and do a little Taco platform add iOS, just to get it in there. Oh, I got a CD to it. Taco CD Dionysus. Taco platform add iOS, just to get it in there. Super duper. Now, I'm just going to say code dot, and we're going to open up the sucker in Visual Studio Code. So, does anyone here already use Visual Studio Code? Well, that's actually pretty good. That's like maybe 50%. You guys are going to love this. So, as of yesterday, we released an extension to Visual Studio Code that customizes it specifically for Cordova development. And this is kind of awesome. So, right off the bat, so I've already kind of got my thing here. And how did I not? Oh, did I already have a Dionysus? Oh, that's an old one. All right, here. We'll just create one of, see if any of these is cancel. We'll create another one that's not Dionysus. I don't know what was up with that. Taco create, how about Aries? Aries. There we go. Oh, it's because I'm in trash. Is that why? Holy. Well, that's not supposed to, I'm not supposed to be there. Yeah. CD. There we go. CD, applications, whack. How do I do this to myself? All right, here's what we're going to do. Yeah, squiggle. Applications. I got the jitters. CD. Why is tab not working? There we go. Yeah, I want to be going to actual root though. There we go. There we go. Okay, so let's go to CD Aries. We'll see what's in there. CD, not a directory. Okay, cool. So I can do it from here. Taco, create, Aries. Yeah, oh, Taco, create. I love this. This is awesome. I've got like an entire community of awesome devs telling me that I can't like do command line. Let's call it. All right, sweet. Now we're there. All right, so I just created Pi. So platform add iOS. Oh my God. You guys are killing me. Oh my Lord, have mercy. All right. File, open. Hi. Doing great. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Good vote of confidence from you there. All right, here we are. So now we're finally in the thick of it. All right. So once we had like normal standard Cordova project, nice thing here, we've already installed the extension. So here I can just like start typing Cordova. And oh, look at that. You know, I've got some nice IntelliSense there that tells me I've got a Cordova object. I've got a couple different things that I can do with it. But as, let's see here, who was saying this? TJ was saying this when he was talking about kind of plugin ecosystem. It's not really Cordova where all the magic happens. It's the plugins where all the magic happens, right? So let's add some plugins and get some great IntelliSense for plugins. So we'll head on back over to our command line. You guys are really going to have to help me through this one. Taco, plugin, add, Cordova, plugin, let's say camera. And just to prove that there's nothing special here about using Taco, let's also do an Ionic. Plugin, add, let's say Cordova, plugin, device. Yeah. Or let's use the Cordova one, right? Cordova, plugin, add, Cordova, plugin, I don't know, file transfer. All right, sweet. So we've just added from multiple different CLIs. They all kind of end up doing the same thing. And what I want to point you to here is over here in VS, this little .vs code, kind of like a project configuration location. We've got some typings here, and here it is dynamically acquired for us, each one of the typings for each of the plugins. Now, if you were loading a project that already existed and it had 2, 5, 10 different plugins, the exact same thing would happen. It will dynamically acquire each of the typings so long as they exist over indefinitely typed, right? And so through this, I get much better IntelliSense to do things like, I don't know, navigator.camera.get picture, cool. Now it tells me what APIs, what methods I've got available, but I don't know about you, but that's not really like the hard part for me. The hard part for me is remembering all the damn options and command line, apparently. So here within the options, I can do things like, okay, start to type quality, and it tells me, oh, hey, that's picture quality in range of 0 to 100. I like my picture quality like I like my life in high fidelity. So I'm going to go with 100. And then what is that? Like that whole like destination type thing? I can never freaking remember what it is. So here I start typing, and again, it gives me all of the options. So I've got beautiful IntelliSense, not just for all of my APIs, but for the options within them. That saves you a lot of time. Yeah, that's kind of cool, right? Like saves time, don't have to go to the docs as much because apparently the docs aren't that great, but now they're getting better. I don't know. Either way, awesome IntelliSense inside of here. Now, all of this is great and cool, but there's more. It's like I feel like I'm on a ShamWow commercial or something like that here, right? There's more, but wait. How much would you pay for this? It's open source, it's free. So I can just hit Control-Shift-P here. I get a nice little command line, and now I can start typing, and look at that. I've actually got command line integration from within my IDE. So if I want to, I can just go from here, say Cordova run, and within this, I'm going to get a nice output here. And as soon as my simulator starts up, this guy will launch from directly within there, which is super, super cool. Now, because I can do all of that within that Visual Studio Code kind of lightweight editor. Oh, I think it might be starting up here. Yep, it's starting up. When I say that I like this template better, really all that it means is that the background is kind of a nice shade of dark blue, and it's got the new logo on it. That's the only new thing about it. But here I've got it. Now, command line integration, IntelliSense, all good, but wait, there's more. Let's head on over to the debugging tab. So for those of you that already use Code, you know about this, but if you haven't used Code, it's one of the few text editors that has a built-in debugger into it. It really sort of started as a node-based debugger. But what we've done is we've leveraged that same debugger and reapplied it to devices, to emulators, and to browsers. So from here, I can now go back to my files, and without having to kind of do any kind of weird go set breakpoints in my browser and then kind of go back and try to map that to my code, I can actually set breakpoints directly in my code. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to do, we have a very short amount of time, so I'm going to do a very simple demo of this. I'll do, so we'll just do a set interval here. Function, and we'll just say I++, I equals 0. And let's do element.innerHTML. HTML equals device ready plus I. All right, so all I'm going to do here is really just set an interval and have a little counter going up so that we can see it running. But what I want to call your attention to is right here, I can just set a nice little breakpoint on that guy, and it's going to do every bit that you expect it to. But here's what we're going to do. We're going to come on over here to our debugging area. We will choose the Cordova debugging environment. And the nice thing about Code is it works with so many different languages and so many different environments, and there's a growing ecosystem of extensions here that you can just pick from a C# coding environment or a PHP coding environment or a Node or a Cordova environment. In this case, we'll just say that we want to attach, we'll actually run on the iOS simulator, and here it's going to execute that exact same Cordova run command. Did I remember to save over here? I hope I did. Oh, yep. So the bottom bar turned orange, so we know that the debugger attached. We have now actually hit our breakpoint because it was on a quick little set interval. And from here, I can mouse over independent objects directly in line with my text. I can inspect variables. I can see all that's happening at runtime in the exact same place that I go to edit those lines. So again, super, super cool. Yeah, right? All right. So that's all that I'm going to say about Visual Studio Code, but at 50 megabytes to download, you can all start it and download it before the end of this talk and install it. I highly recommend it as a tool for actual Cordova development. It's helped me be much, much more productive. That's all fine and good. We got more to talk about. Oh, you guys get to see me. Hopefully my password writing is better than my command line. All right, cool. So that's Visual Studio Code. But there's another piece of the puzzle here, and this is a theme that's kind of repeated throughout the day. We heard Shaz in the last couple minutes talking about it with kind of bringing native plugins and kind of using Content Sync to deliver them to the running application. We heard about it earlier with is it Mobility? Is that right? Or with the Mobify? Thank you, Mobify with the Astro project. Right? There's a lot of us here in the community who are really trying to think about ways that we can mix and match native with web and use the right tools for the job to improve the developer experience and to improve our ability to kind of deploy and get kind of code out without all of the normal gateways that native developers are really encumbered by. And so here I want to talk to you guys about a project that we originally named Apache Cordova Native Experiment. We realized that was probably a bad idea. So we're just going to call it ACE. We're going to call this Project ACE. That's a better one. We're not very original with our names. Apache Cordova Experiment is a little bit broad-reaching, but let's remove that. So here's what this is about. This is, again, a lot like the Astro plugin. So sometimes you need native UI components. Maybe it's for not necessarily the entire app, but maybe it's just for a single component, right? Maybe it's for something like the tabs bar, or maybe it is something like a hamburger menu. Maybe, yeah, like here, little slide in, something like that. Maybe you need it for overlays, right? Where it's kind of superimposing over your existing web view and kind of taking advantage of that kind of that super blur that's available in iOS that's not available directly in the web view itself. Maybe it's for page transitions where you're kind of moving in between one page to the other, much again like we saw with the one of the plugins that TJ showed off earlier today. Maybe it's to reuse an existing native component that hasn't yet been packaged as a plugin, right? And you just kind of want to experiment with it and bring it in. Maybe it's to kind of standardize across a native screen. I've worked with one client that's a financial institution, a bank, and their login absolutely has to be in native. But beyond that, they would prefer to reuse web content for everything behind it. Right? There's lots of reasons for us to mix and match native with web. And so Project ACE is really all about creating an escape hatch to the native world. It provides access to native UI, it provides access to native APIs, but it's still Cordova and it's still accessed through the web view. Right? So your primary entrance to this is as a Cordova plugin. The majority of your application logic is written in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, but when you need to, when you want to, you can leverage select components or even straight native APIs through reflection in JavaScript to gain access to the native side of things. It is, much like Shaz showed in the last 20 minutes, experimental. At the moment, it's a proof of concept, but it's a proof of concept that we hope that you'll express interest in. And I hope that you'll send feedback, whether it's in the form of I love it, or bugs, or don't care for it. So let's talk a little bit about how it works. So today, it comes in a couple of different flavors. We've got components for docked elements that stay maybe docked up at the top, or at the bottom, or on the side. In other words, statically positioned elements. There are components for overlays, components for separate full screen views, and for page transitions. Each one of these has been implemented for both iOS and for Android. As previously referenced with my complaint about the Google emulator, we will only be showing it for iOS today, and we only have so much time anyways. It is not implemented for Windows today. If we hear feedback and you guys want it for Windows, heck yeah, we'll go there. But today we're starting off with iOS and Android. All right, so let's actually kind of show you a little demo of this. So has everyone installed the Ionic app for PhoneGap Day? People seen that? No? If you haven't, here, let's actually, we're gonna launch this guy. So hang with me, guys. We're gonna go back to the command line. Let's see here. Yeah, we got this here. So we got PhoneGap Day. So let's do cd PhoneGap Day whack PhoneGap Day. Cool. Let's close this guy. Close folder. File. Open. PhoneGap Day. PhoneGap Day. All right, cool. So I'm just going to start by running this guy so that you see, actually, let's run it. I'm going to run it first as it was meant to be, as God intended it, a pure hybrid app. False. All right. This is written in Ionic 2 Alpha. Right, guys? Alpha? Yeah, Alpha. It has occasionally been crashing the first time that I open it. Let's see if it still crashes the first time. Oh no, here we go. All right, cool. So nice little Ionic app, just kind of showing all the different sessions that are available and all the different speakers that are available. And you can kind of navigate around into it, rate different things, right? Actually, these don't have rates. We can filter when we filter. And here I actually want you guys to pay special attention to the fact when I filter, notice that the screen slides up. And notice that the options here are kind of normal radio buttons. It actually looks, feels, smells, tastes great. It's a freaking awesome app. But I'm going to change it now. And I'm going to flip the switch. We've just got a little bit of conditional code in here that says when I UI enabled, it's going to actually invoke all of this, the sort of forked if-else code for using Project ACE. So I say true. We're going to run it again. Here we go. All right. So now this time, I'm going to invoke the same filter. Other pretty much looks exactly like the app that we just had. But this time, when I invoke the filter, notice how each one of the radio buttons has the accessibility controls enabled. It does that because this is now a fully native screen that we have pulled into the app, right? So it has navigation that comes back and forth because this top part up here is also native control again, as is, when I come back here, the tabs down at the bottom, which in the Ionic framework are typically rendered via HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and you would see this if you went into like the inspector to look at the individual elements themselves. In this case, they're all actually the native tab controls. So what's going on here? Excuse me. So when the app first initializes, what's actually happening is that we are taking that web view, reconstructing or rehydrating a new native application with all of the UI imposed. Like, so in this case, it is the title bar up at the top, the tabs down at the bottom, and then we are reparenting a smaller web view in its space. We've replaced all of the controls that were kind of original HTML ones and said, you know what, Ionic, don't render those. Those aren't necessary. You can pull those out. And so we're able to get pages loading back and forth, able to navigate just as we would otherwise. Excuse me. But we get access to things like that. Now, in this case, I've used a full screen kind of bleed over, right? Or kind of overlay, if you will. But that's not all that we can do. We can also, let's go to one of these. And here I'll admit that I did a fairly poor job with my styling. But here we've got a ratings control. And this ratings control, it's actually a native object that has been overlaid on top of the web view. But it still has all of the transparency that you would expect out of a native control, right? You can still see through it to what's beneath the little pattern background behind it. But it's a native control. If you were in Android, if we could, for example, start up the Android emulator, you would see that it's actually the native control for Android. So it looks a little bit more like what you'd expect out of the Netflix kind of 5-star slidey thing, right? Not only that, but if I go to pages, like, let's see here, we go to our About page here. I want to call your attention to a little bit of code down here. Let's see, the just for fun. Here we are. So you see here where it says this phone, iPhone, parenthetical, iPhone simulator, right? So if this were a real phone, it would display a phone number there. But here's what we're doing here. This code right here is us just for fun calling into the native APIs using reflection off of native, kind of a JavaScript reflection of the native APIs and invoking those from within the JavaScript. So I don't necessarily have to write a separate plugin to invoke native code. I can do it straight up in line with my JavaScript. And it's just mix and match JavaScript, native code back and forth. If that's your flavor, eat that ice cream sandwich. All right. Now there's some cool things happening here. I showed you earlier with this guy that we could invoke him here. That guy, let's see here, let's actually bring him up. That is in the filter. I want to bring up filter here and XAML. That guy is being invoked by this XML right here, which looks an awful lot like Android XML. We can also, let's see here, if I go back to, I think it's the About page, view your session ratings. When I click on this guy, I get a list of ratings. That stuff is invoked from ratings. a separate file right here, this myratings.xaml. Here's the cool thing about this. That myratings.xaml, if I come back to the About page, it's just a straight up link. Ahref equals some native code, go to the XAML file, right? So your ability here and your flexibility to mix and match between native code when you need it, JavaScript and HTML and CSS when you need it, is far, far greater. And so hopefully, through the use of a plugin like this, we hope that Cordova developers will be able to kind of use the right tool for the right job at the right time. When you need that native code for whatever reason, you've got an escape hatch. You've got a way that you can get to the native APIs and still do it in a way that is coding friendly to kind of the web workflow and the kind of the skills that we're best at, which at least for me is JavaScript development and not command lines. All right, cool. So we've got a quick little summary here, just kind of showing what is available to you. Once again, from a cross-platform perspective, you can still imperatively declare any of your UI in JavaScript. You can still declaratively invoke it through, here it's XML, but there's multiple different bindings that we could create here. And this is a place where we're looking for a moment of feedback from you as developers. What do you want those bindings to? Do you want them to web components that look and smell and taste like Ionic, for example? Do you want them towards a more familiar language like for a Windows developer, XAML? Or do you want them to map directly to something like Android XML? At the platform-specific level, you can fork your code at any moment, create platform-specific JavaScript for iOS or for Android. Same thing at the XML side of things. For the sort of write twice, you can use components that are created out of the iOS storyboard or out of the Android Visual Designer. Super cool stuff. So with that, I'll close it up. You can find information about all of this at taco.tools. You can connect with me on Twitter at Ryan J Salva. And if you've got any thoughts, tips, complaints, ideas about the ACE project, Twitter, #AcePlugin. Thank you so much.